The storm begins hook the sky was dark and heavy. Thick gray clouds moved like giant shadows across the frozen land. The wind howled like a hungry beast, carrying sharp ice that cut the skin like knives. Snow fell endlessly, covering everything in white. The world looked dead, silent and cruel. In the middle of this storm, a mother walked slowly through the deep snow. She was not human. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes bright like silver. She belonged to a race that lived in this cold world. Her people were strong, but they were not kind. They never shared, never helped each other. In their world, compassion was weakness. But now this mother did not care about pride or strength. She cared only about her child. The small boy clung to her side, his tiny body shaking. His hands were turning purple, his breath weak. The storm was too strong for him. She held him close, wrapping him in her arms. But she knew it was not enough. The cold was winning. Her heart raced with fear. She had seen many children die during storms like this. Her people would only watch, saying it was nature's law. But she could not let her child die. She whispered in his ear, her voice shaking. "Hold on, little one, please. Hold on." The storm grew worse. Ice struck her face, and her legs felt heavy as stone. Her energy was fading. She looked around, but there was no shelter, no fire. Nothing but endless snow. Her people's caves were far behind. She had left them because they refused to help. She begged them for warmth for her son, but they laughed and turned away. Now she was alone. Alone against the storm. Then something strange happened. Through the thick snow, she saw a shape moving in the distance. At first, she thought it was a shadow, maybe another of her people. But no, this figure walked differently. It was tall, broad-shouldered, and wrapped in strange clothing. It moved with strength, pushing through the storm as if it had faced many storms before. Her silver eyes narrowed. Fear filled her chest. This was no one from her world. This was something else. A stranger. A being she had never seen before. The figure came closer, step by step, until she could see his face. His skin was not blue. His eyes were not silver. His body looked fragile compared to her people, yet his movements showed courage. This was a human. She had heard stories of humans before. Stories told in whispers. Her people called them dangerous, soft, and foolish. They said humans cared too much, helped too much, and that their kindness made them weak. But why would such a being walk alone in this storm? Why would he come here? The human stopped a few steps away. His breath was heavy, white clouds rising. In the cold air, his eyes fell on the child in her arms. She expected him to look away, like her own people did. But instead, his face changed. His eyes grew wide with concern. Without speaking, he pulled something from his pack. A thick, warm cloth. He stepped closer, slowly, carefully, as if he did not want to frighten her. She froze, unsure what to do. The human bent down. He placed the cloth gently over the child, wrapping him in warmth. Then he looked into the mother's eyes. There was no anger, no cruelty. Only compassion. She could not understand it. Why would a stranger and outsider help her child? He had nothing to gain. In her world, no one gave without reason. Yet here was this human, offering warmth. Without asking for anything, the child stirred under the cloth, his small body relaxing a little. For the first time since the storm began, the mother felt hope, but along with hope came fear. What if this was a trick? What if this human planned to take her child or harm them? She stepped back slightly, her eyes sharp, ready to defend. The human raised his hands slowly, showing they were empty. His voice broke through the storm, calm but firm. "Safe? You are safe." She did not understand all his words, but she felt his meaning. His tone carried honesty. His eyes carried truth. For a long moment, the mother stood in silence. The storm screamed around them, snow flying like knives. But in that frozen wasteland, she felt something she had never known before. A warmth not from fire, not from cloth, but from a living being, compassion. Her people had never shown it. She had never believed it was real. But now, in the middle of death's storm, a human was showing it to her. She looked down at her child. His breathing was stronger now, his eyes opening slightly. The mother felt tears sting her face. She had not cried in years, but now hope filled her heart. The human pointed toward the distance. Through the storm, she saw a faint light, maybe shelter, maybe fire. He wanted to lead them there. The mother hesitated. If she followed, she would be trusting. A stranger. Trust was dangerous. But if she refused, her child would die. The storm roared louder, shaking the ground. Time was running out. With trembling hands, she nodded. The human gave a small, gentle smile. He took the first step into the storm, and she followed, clutching her child tight. For the first time in her life, she was not walking alone. First contact, the storm did not forgive. It roared above them, shaking the white sky, screaming across the endless ice fields. Yet three figures kept moving. The alien mother, her weak child, and the strange human leading the way. Every step felt like a battle. The mother's arms ached. As she held her child close, her legs heavy as stone. But her eyes never left the human in front of her. His tall shape cut through the storm, his shoulders strong, his steps steady. Why was he helping? This question burned in her mind again and again. In her world, no one helped unless there was a price. But this human had given his cloak, his warmth, without demand. Still, her heart whispered warnings. He could be dangerous. He could be hiding something. The human stopped suddenly. His hand lifted, pointing at a cluster of rocks ahead. The mother narrowed her silver eyes. At first, it looked like only more frozen stone. But then she saw it a crack, a small opening. A cave. Shelter. The human pushed snow aside and entered first. He looked back, nodding for her to follow. She hesitated. What if it was a trap? Another blast of icy wind struck her face, and her child whimpered weakly in her arms. She had no choice. Inside, the cave was dark and cold, but at least the wind could not reach them. The human dropped his pack and began moving quickly. He gathered pieces of dry wood from inside driftwood, frozen branches, things he must have collected before. His hands worked fast, skilled, as if he had done this many times. The mother watched, confused. What was he doing? Then, with a spark and a breath, fire came alive. She gasped. Her people had never mastered fire. They lived in the cold, believing it was their destiny. Fire was a legend, a forbidden dream. Yet here it was, dancing before her eyes, warm and alive. The human gestured for her to sit closer. The child stirred, drawn to the light. Slowly, carefully, the mother sat near the fire, holding her son close to its heat. She felt warmth seep into her bones, and for the first time in hours, she could breathe without pain. The human looked at the child. His face softened. He pulled something else from his pack, strange food wrapped in thin cloth. He offered a piece. To the mother, her heart raced. Was it poison? A trick? She stared at him, her silver eyes sharp. The human did not eat first. Instead, he broke the food in half and placed a small piece gently to the child's lips. The boy swallowed weakly, his body trembling, but then his eyes opened wider. The mother felt her chest tighten. Her child had strength again, even if only a little. Slowly, she took the rest of the food and gave it to him. The human only watched, silent, calm. His eyes were kind. She wanted to speak, but hesitated. Her people's language was not his. Yet when she opened her mouth, the human seemed to understand her intent. He touched his chest and said slowly, "Human." She blinked. The sound was strange, heavy, but she understood. He was naming himself. His kind. Her lips trembled. At last, she whispered, "Mother?" She pointed to herself. Then, with shaking hands, she touched the child. "Child." The human's eyes lit with understanding. He nodded, repeating softly, "Mother, child." His voice was gentle, almost warm like the fire. Something inside her shifted. For the first time in her life, she was not only surviving, she was connecting. But then, fear struck her heart again. What if her people found them? They saw her with a human they would not forgive. To them, humans were weak creatures, outsiders. Nothing but threats. And she would be called a traitor. The human must have seen the fear in her eyes, because he lowered his voice and said only one word: safe. The word was simple, but the way he said it was powerful. His tone carried. No lies, only promise. The mother did not know how to answer. She looked at the child, who was now sleeping peacefully against her arms, his breath steadier. For the first time, she allowed herself to close her eyes for a moment. She listened to the crackle of fire, the steady rhythm of the human's breath, and the storm outside. But her mind was restless. Why was this human here? How had he survived so long in such a cruel world? And what would happen when others discovered him? She opened her eyes again. The human was staring into the fire, silent. His face calm, but his eyes heavy with unspoken pain. He carried secrets. She could feel it. The cave was warm now, but her thoughts were cold with doubt. She whispered to herself, words only she could hear. Why help me? Why help my child? What do you want, human? The human did not answer. Perhaps he did not hear, or perhaps he was waiting for the right time to tell his story. Outside, the storm screamed louder, but inside, a fragile bond was being born. A bond her people would never understand. For the first time in her life, the mother felt something dangerous but powerful. Not fear, not anger, hope. The child endangered the storm outside, never rested. It screamed across the frozen land, shaking the walls of the cave like an angry spirit. Inside, the fire burned weakly, fighting against the cold. The mother sat close to the flames, her arms wrapped tightly around her child. At first, the warmth had helped. The boy's body no longer shook, and his breaths had grown steady. But as the hours passed, his skin grew pale again. His chest rose and fell too slowly. His tiny fingers turned cold despite the fire. Fear filled the mother's heart. She pressed her ear close to his lips, listening to his weak breath. Her silver eyes widened in panic. The fire was not enough. The food was not enough. The storm had stolen too much of his strength. She looked at the human. He was checking the fire, adding more wood, but when he turned and saw her face, he froze. His eyes narrowed and he quickly moved closer. The child whimpered, a thin sound. Barely there. The human knelt down, studying the boy's face. His own eyes filled with concern. Without hesitation, he opened his pack and pulled out a small container. Inside was a strange liquid, thick and glowing faintly in the firelight. The mother pulled back, clutching her child tighter. Fear rushed through her veins. What was that? Poison? A trap? Her people always warned her. Strangers give gifts that kill. The human shook his head firmly. His voice was low, steady. Medicine. He pointed at the child, then tapped the container. Help. The mother's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but trust was dangerous. Her people had always said humans were soft liars. But when she looked down at her child, she saw the truth. He was slipping away. Her lips trembled. If she refused, her child might die tonight. She accepted, she risked everything. The human opened the container and poured a few drops into a small cup. Then, without a word, he took a sip himself. He swallowed, then showed her his mouth to prove it was safe. Her breath caught. He had risked his own life to prove it to her. With shaking hands, she let him give a little of the liquid to the boy. The child swallowed weakly, his throat moving, then let out a soft sigh. For a long moment, nothing happened. The mother's heart pounded like thunder. Then, slowly, color returned to the child's face. His breathing grew stronger. His little hand moved, clutching at the mother's arm. Tears filled her eyes. Relief washed over her like a wave. For the first time since the storm began, she allowed herself to hope. The human smiled faintly, then leaned back against the cave wall. His shoulders sagged as if carrying heavy memories. The mother watched him in silence. Who was this man? This stranger? Why would he risk his medicine, his strength, for a child not his own? In her world, no one gave anything without demand. Yet he gave freely, again and again. Hours passed. The storm outside raged, but inside, the fire burned steady. The child slept peacefully, his small body safe in the mother's arms. But peace did not last. A sharp crack split the air. The cave wall trembled. Snow and ice began to fall from above. The storm was breaking the cave apart. The human leaped to his feet, grabbing his pack. He motioned for the mother to stand. Out, he shouted. Now, the mother's heart raced. She held her child close and followed him as chunks of rock crashed behind them. The cave was collapsing. They ran into the storm once again. The wind struck them like knives, snow blinding their eyes. The mother stumbled, almost falling, but the human caught her arm. Pulling her forward, they reached a ridge of ice, tall and sharp like glass towers. The human pointed to a narrow passage between them. Shelter, he led the way, but then the child coughed violently. His body shook again, his breath short and painful. The medicine was working, but the cold was stealing it away. The mother's heart screamed with terror. She sank to her knees, shielding her son with her body. "No, please, not now," she whispered. The human dropped beside her. His face was hard, his eyes fierce. He pulled another cloth from his pack, wrapping it tightly around the boy. Then he lifted the child into his arms. The mother gasped. Her instinct screamed to take him back, to protect her son from this stranger. But when she looked at the human's face, she froze. He was not taking the boy, he was saving him. His arms held the child carefully, gently, like a father would. His jaw was tight, his breath heavy, but his eyes were filled with something she had never seen before: compassion. The human pushed forward, carrying the child through the icy passage. The mother followed close, her fear battling her hope. The storm howled louder, but inside her, something louder was growing. A question: why? Why would this human risk his life, his warmth, his strength, for her and her child? As they reached the end of the passage, the mother looked at him and whispered, her voice almost lost in the storm. Why? The human glanced at her, his breath fogging in the air. His answer was simple, only one word: because. The mother's heart stopped. Because, no demand. No reason, only compassion. For the first time in her life, she believed such a thing was real. But even as hope filled her chest, shadows moved in the storm. Dark figures watching from the distance. Her people, and they had seen everything. The human secret the storm howled through the night. But inside the icy passage, the fire burned small and steady. The alien mother sat close to her child, who now breathed more easily. His little body was wrapped tightly in cloth, his face calm at last. Across the fire, the human sat with his back against the cold wall. His eyes glowed faintly in the light. Tired but sharp, watching the flames as if they were old friends. His hands rested on his knees, rough and scarred from survival. The mother's heart was full of questions. Who was this man? Why was he here on a world so cruel? Why did he risk his life for strangers? She wanted to ask, but her words were not his words. Her tongue was not his tongue. Still, she tried. She touched her chest. Mother, she touched her child. Child. Then, slowly, she pointed at him. The human looked up. His face softened. He touched his own chest. Daniel, Daniel. His name. The sound was strange to her ears, heavy, yet gentle. She repeated it softly. Daniel. For the first time, the human smiled. Not a smile of victory, not a smile of pride, but a small, fragile smile that warmed the frozen air. The mother tilted her head. She pointed again, this time at the storm outside. Why? Her voice was broken, but her eyes spoke louder. Oh, why? Was he here? Why was he helping? Daniel's smile faded. He looked down at the fire, his jaw tightening. For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence stretched, broken only by the storm's roar. Finally, he reached into his pack and pulled out something small, wrapped in cloth. Slowly, carefully, he unwrapped it. Inside was a picture torn at the edges, but still clear. The mother leaned forward, her silver eyes narrowing. It showed faces. A woman, 2 children. All human, they were smiling, their eyes full of warmth. Daniel's hand shook as he held the picture near the fire. His eyes softened, but his mouth trembled with unspoken pain. He pointed at the picture, then at himself. Family. The mother's breath caught. She understood. His family. They had been with him once. But where were they now? Daniel's eyes darkened. He pointed to the storm outside, then made a crashing motion with his hands. His ship. The mother realized he had fallen from the sky. A crash. He had been trapped here, alone. Her chest tightened with sudden understanding. His family was gone, lost to the storm or the crash, or perhaps this cruel world. She did not know which, but she saw the grief carved deep in his face. And yet, he still helped. Even after losing everything, he still gave warmth, food, medicine. Hope. The mother lowered her gaze, ashamed. Her own people would never do such a thing. They would see weakness and turn away. But this human, broken and alone, chose to protect a child not his own. Daniel placed the picture back into his pack, his hands trembling slightly. Then he looked up, his eyes locking with hers. He spoke one word, slow and firm. Promise. The mother frowned. She did not understand. Daniel touched his chest again. Promise. Then he pointed to the child, his eyes burning with fierce light. She understood. It made a promise once to protect, to save, to never let go. Perhaps to his family, perhaps to himself. And even now, in this frozen world, he carried that promise. The fire flickered between them, warm and alive. For the first time, the mother felt not only hope, but respect. But the moment of peace did not last. A sound echoed faintly through the storm outside. A deep, hollow call. Not the wind, not the storm. Voices, her people, the mother's blood ran cold. They were near. They must have followed. And if they saw her with the human, they would not forgive. She grabbed her child tightly, her eyes wide with fear. She looked at Daniel, who was already on his feet, his hand reaching for a piece of wood sharpened into a weapon. His face hardened. His jaw set. The mother shook her head quickly. No, no fight. But Daniel did not move back. His body stood strong, ready, like a wall between her and the storm. The voices grew louder. Shapes moved in the snow outside. Her people were close now, their glowing eyes sharp in the darkness. The mother's heart raced. She had to decide, would she stand with her people or with this human who had saved her child? The storm howled louder, as if demanding an answer. Daniel's hand tightened around his weapon. His other hand reached back slightly, as if shielding both her and the child. His voice was low, steady, and filled with fire. Safe. One word. The same word he had spoken before. But this time, it was not only a promise. It was a vow. The mother's breath shook. She looked at her son, then at the human. For the first time in her life, she realized the truth. Safety was not in numbers, not in strength, not even in her people. Safety was here, with him. And if she had to choose, she would choose compassion. The voices outside grew closer. Footsteps, crunching in the snow. The shadows of her people stretched across the icy cave walls. The human secret was no longer just about his past. His secret was also this, in a world of cruelty. He carried something her people had forgotten. Hope. And tonight, that hope would be tested. Betrayal around the corner, the firelight flickered weakly against the icy walls. But outside, shadows moved closer. The alien mother could hear their voices, narrow, sharp, cold. Her people. She froze, clutching her child tightly. Her heart beat fast, louder than the storm itself. They had found her. And they had seen the human. Daniel stood tall, his body tense, his weapon raised. His eyes burned with focus, ready to fight. But the mother knew the truth. Her people were many, and Daniel was only one. If he fought, he would die. The first figure appeared at the mouth of the cave, pale blue skin, silver eyes. Strong, tall, wrapped in thick furs. Then another and another. Soon, 6 of them stood in the storm, blocking the exit. The leader stepped forward, his voice booming like thunder. You, woman, step away from that creature. His eyes burned with fury as he pointed at Daniel. You bring shame. You bring danger. Do you not know what he is? The mother's throat went dry. She wanted to speak, but her voice trembled. Daniel did not move. He stood like stone, his weapon steady, his eyes locked on the intruders. The leader spat into the snow. Ah, human. Weak, foolish. Their kind gives and gives until nothing is left. They do not survive. They die, and they will take us down with them. The others murmured in agreement. Their silver eyes glowed in the firelight, cold and merciless. The mother's child stirred weakly in her arms. His breath was shallow again, his small body fragile. She pulled him close, her eyes shining with desperation. The leader's gaze shifted. To the boy, you risk your son for this outsider. You bring poison into our bloodline. His voice turned cruel. Better the child die than learn weakness from a human. The mother gasped. Her heart filled with both rage and fear. She wanted to scream, but the words stuck in her throat. Daniel stepped forward suddenly, placing himself between the mother and her people. His voice was sharp, filled with fire. Safe. One word, but it shook the cave like thunder. He pointed. To the mother, then to the child. His meaning was clear. He would protect them, even against her own people. The aliens laughed coldly. He thinks he can fight us. One of them sneered. A broken creature from the sky. He cannot even survive our storms without stealing from us. The leader raised his hand, and the laughter stopped. His eyes narrowed. Kill him. The mother's breath caught. Time slowed. She saw 2 warriors step forward, ice spears in their hands. Their faces were blank, merciless. They were going to end him. Her chest tightened. She looked at Daniel. He did not run, he did not beg. He simply stood, ready to fight to the last breath. Ready to die for her child. Something broke inside her. She stood. Her voice, for the first time, rang out strong and clear. No. The warriors froze. The leader turned to her, eyes burning. What did you say? Her hands shook, but she held her child close and stepped forward. He saved my son. He gave fire. He gave food. He gave life when all of you gave nothing. Her voice cracked with pain. If weakness is compassion, then I choose weakness. The leader's face twisted with fury. Traitor. The word cut deep, sharper than any blade. The others hissed in agreement. Her own people, the only family she had ever known now, looked at her with hatred. Daniel's jaw tightened. He reached for her arm, as if to steady her. But she did not step back. She stood tall, trembling but unbroken. The leader raised his spear. If you stand with the human, then you fall with the human. The mother's heart pounded. She knew what was coming. Her people would not forgive. They would not show mercy. The warriors stepped closer, their weapons glinting in the firelight. The child whimpered softly, his voice weak but clear. Mother. Tears burned her eyes. She held him tighter, her voice shaking. I will not let them take you. I will not. Daniel's voice broke through the storm. Run. She turned to him, her eyes wide. His gaze was steady, fierce. Run. The leader growled, raising his spear high. The warriors lunged. Daniel moved like fire, striking the first attacker with raw strength, knocking the spear aside. The cave erupted in chaos shouts, steel, snow, and fury. The mother clutched her child and ran into the storm. The wind screamed against her face, but her legs moved fast, her heart driving her forward. She did not look back, though the sounds of battle echoed behind her. Still, in her mind, she saw Daniel standing alone against her people, protecting them with everything he had. Betrayal had come, just as she feared. But in that betrayal, she had made her choice. She would not go back to the cold ways of her people. Not anymore, and even if it cost her everything, she would protect the human who had shown her compassion. The storm swallowed her cries as she vanished into the night. Behind her, the cave burned with fire, steel, and fate. The escape, the storm, was a beast with endless teeth, biting at everything in its path. Snow whipped across the frozen land, making it hard to see more than a few steps ahead. The alien mother stumbled forward, clutching her child close to her chest. Her breath came in sharp gasps, her heart hammering in her ears. Behind her, the sounds of battle echoed, the clash of spears, the crackle of fire, the roar of Daniel's voice. He fought her people with all the strength he had, but she knew he could not hold them forever. She wanted to turn back, but her son whimpered weakly against her. His fragile breaths reminded her why she had to run. She pushed forward into the storm, the snow swallowing her tracks almost as soon as they were made. Then hands grabbed her. She screamed, twisting around. One of her people had followed. Tall warrior with silver eyes glowing in the night. His grip was like iron, yanking her back. The mother's child cried out, his small voice breaking through the storm. Rage filled her chest. With every ounce of strength, she slammed her shoulder into the warrior, biting, clawing, anything to break free. But he was too strong. Before he could strike, a shadow leaped from the storm. Daniel, he crashed into the warrior, with the force of a storm itself, knocking him to the ground. The two rolled across the snow, fists striking, weapons clashing. The mother stumbled back, holding her son close, her eyes wide with terror and awe. Daniel rose first, his breath heavy. his body bloodied but unbroken. The warrior lay still in the snow. "Run!" Daniel barked, his voice harsh but steady. He grabbed her arm, pulling her forward. Together, they plunged deeper into the storm. The wind screamed, chasing them like a predator. Behind them, more shadows. Moved, silver eyes glowing like ghosts. Her people would not stop. They would follow until the human was dead and she too. If she stayed with him, they ran across a frozen ridge, the ice cracking under their weight. The mother's heart stopped as she heard the sound, a low groan beneath the snow. The ground was breaking. "Careful!" Daniel shouted, dragging her forward. Too late. The ice split with a deafening crack, opening into a black abyss. The mother screamed as she slipped, clutching her child tighter. Daniel caught her wrist just in time, his muscles straining as he pulled her back from the edge. Her breath shook violently. For a moment, she had seen death's mouth below an endless fall into frozen darkness. She looked at Daniel, his face grim, his jaw tight, his eyes fierce. He had saved her again. They pressed on, stumbling through jagged ice fields. The child coughed weakly, his little body shivering. The mother's heart ached. He could not take much more. Daniel noticed. Without a word, he stopped, pulling off his last layer of warmth, a heavy coat lined with fur. He wrapped it around the boy, tightening it carefully. The mother gasped. "No." "Acuni," Daniel shook his head, his voice firm. "He needs." The words cut through her chest like fire. He would freeze faster now, but he didn't care. The child's life mattered more to him than his own. The storm pushed harder, but they kept going. Hours seemed to pass in seconds, each step a battle against death. At last, Daniel spotted something in the distance, a dark shape rising from the white horizon. Shelter. It was an old ruin, half buried in ice, perhaps left from some forgotten age. The human's eyes lit with fierce determination. He led them toward it, pushing through the storm with the last of his strength. But their hunters were close. Shouts rang out across the storm. Silver eyes appeared behind them, moving fast. The mother's heart pounded. They would not make it. Not with the child slowing them down. She stopped suddenly, turning to Daniel. Her voice broke with fear and desperation. "Take him. Save him." Daniel's eyes widened. He shook his head violently. "No." Tears stung her silver eyes. "They want you. They want me, not him. Take him and go." But Daniel stepped closer, his voice a low growl against the storm. "We all go." His words were not a request. They were a command, a vow. Before she could argue, the hunters burst from the snow. Spears raised, eyes burning, voices full of fury. Daniel roared, charging forward. He fought with the strength of a man who had nothing left to lose, striking, blocking, driving them back. The mother clutched her son and ran toward the ruins, her breath ragged, her legs trembling. Daniel fought like fire, but he could not hold forever. The mother screamed his name, her voice breaking, as another warrior lunged at him from the side. Daniel fell to one knee. Blood on the snow. The mother's chest burned with terror. She wanted to run, but her legs froze. Could she leave him? Could she let him die while he had given everything for her child? No. With a cry of rage, she picked up a fallen spear from the ground. Her hands shook, but her heart was steady. She charged forward, striking with all her strength. The warrior fell, surprise in his glowing eyes. Daniel looked up, his face pale but alive. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. They were no longer strangers, no longer human and alien. They were allies. Together, they stumbled into the ruins, collapsing against the cold stone walls. The storm screamed outside, and their hunters' voices echoed in the distance. But for now, they had escaped. The mother clutched her child close. Daniel sat against the wall, his breath heavy, his face bloodied, his body shaking with exhaustion. The child stirred in her arms, whispering faintly, almost too soft to hear. One word: friend. The mother's heart broke and healed all at once. Her people had betrayed her, but here, in the ruins, something new had been born. But outside, in the storm, the silver eyes still waited. And the true danger was not yet over. A new beginning. The ruins stood silent against the storm. Broken stone, half buried in ice. A reminder of an age long gone. Inside, 3 figures huddled close to a small fire. The mother, pale-skinned and weary. The child, wrapped in furs, breathing softly. And Daniel, the human, bloodied but unbroken. For hours, they had listened to the storm roar outside. The voices of hunters fading into the distance. But the danger was not gone. Her people would return. They would not rest until the human was destroyed and she was punished for betraying them. The mother sat close to her child, brushing frost from his hair. His silver eyes opened weakly, but this time there was life in them. He looked at Daniel, who leaned against the wall, exhausted, his body trembling from cold and wounds. The boy's lips parted, and he whispered one word again: friend. Daniel's eyes softened. He gave a faint smile, though pain lined his face. The mother felt tears burn her eyes. In her people's world, friend was a word without meaning. No one trusted, no one shared. But now her child spoke it as his first gift to the human. The fire crackled softly. The mother broke the silence, her voice low and heavy. They will come again. Daniel's jaw tightened. He nodded slowly. He did not need translation. He knew. His eyes glanced toward the shattered doorway where snow blew in like a warning. For a moment, hopelessness filled her. She had turned, her back on her people. She had chosen compassion over cruelty. But what future did that leave? Where could they go when the world itself wanted them dead? Her thoughts were broken by Daniel's movement. With slow, shaky hands, he pulled something from his pack. A small object, half frozen, its lights dim but still alive. She leaned closer. It was a device, strange and unfamiliar, yet filled with hidden power. Daniel tapped its screen. A faint map flickered to life, showing distant mountains, rivers of ice. And far away a symbol glowing like a star. He pointed to the symbol. Home. The mother's eyes widened. He had a goal, a place, perhaps the ruins of his ship, or a signal. Station, something that could call others like him. A chance to escape this frozen world. Hope sparked in her chest, but fear followed. The journey would be long, through storms and dangers, with her people hunting them. Could they survive? Daniel met her eyes. His voice was quiet but strong. Promise. She remembered the picture he carried, the family he had lost, the vow he still carried. He had promised once before, and now he promised again. To protect, to endure, to never give up. The mother looked at her child, sleeping softly in her arms. She whispered, "Then I promise too." The storm outside began to fade, its rage softening into silence. Dawn was breaking. Pale light spread across the frozen land, painting the ruins in silver and gold. For the first time in many days, the world did not look cruel. It looked new. They stepped out together into the snow. The child clung to his mother, wrapped tightly in furs, his small eyes watching the horizon. Daniel walked beside them, his steps heavy but steady. Behind them, the ruins crumbled further, swallowed by ice. Behind them lay betrayal, hatred, and a world that wanted them dead. But ahead was possibility the mother's heart felt. Strange, heavy with fear, but also light with hope. She had never believed in compassion, never trusted in kindness. Yet here she was, walking beside a human who had shown her both. The child stirred and reached out a small hand. Daniel looked down, surprised, then carefully took the boy's hand in his own. The mother watched, her eyes burning with tears. In that moment, she saw something she had never imagined, a bridge between two worlds. But the silence did not last. Far behind them, faint but clear, came the sound of horns. Her people, they had found the trail again. The mother's breath shook. She looked at Daniel, her voice sharp with fear. They come. Daniel turned toward the sound, his eyes narrowing. He gripped the broken spear he still carried, his body weak but his spirit unshaken. He gave a single nod. Then we keep going. The three of them began to move again, faster now, across the frozen plains. The storm had passed, but the true trial had only begun as the sun rose higher. Casting long shadows over the snow, the mother realized something. She was no longer running away from her people. She was running toward something greater, a new beginning. Her people had betrayed her. The world had tried to kill her, but compassion had given her strength, and a human had given her hope. And as long as Daniel walked beside her, she believed they could endure. Yet deep in the distance, on the horizon of endless ice, a darker shape moved. A storm not of snow, but of shadows. Something far greater than her people. Something that had been waiting, watching. The mother held her child tighter. She whispered to herself, a vow stronger than fear. We will survive together. The wind carried her words across the frozen land into the dawn of a new world.